Hi, I'm Natalie Brennan. While my brother Derek was saying his vows at the Pfister Hotel, I was standing under the northern lights in Reykjavik, watching the sky split open in shades of green the first didn't know existed. I wasn't invited to his wedding. Not an oversight. Not a lost envelope. A choice. And when I posted that photo of me against the aurora, wine glass raised to the frozen horizon, my mother called me selfish. My father called me vengeful. Derek called me dead to him. But here's what they didn't call me. Family. Turns out, I never was. Not really. Not in the way that mattered. They had spent years making sure I understood my place, which was always just outside the frame, just beyond the warmth. But this time, they went too far. And what they thought would break me became the moment I finally stopped breaking for them. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 3 months before Derek's wedding, I was sitting on the floor of my Bayview apartment surrounded by half-packed boxes and paint swatches, trying to decide between dusty sage and smoky olive for the feature wall of my new pottery studio. The lease had just been signed. My hands still smelled like wet clay from the trial class I'd taught that morning. 6 students. All of them stayed the full 2 hours. One of them, an older woman with kind eyes and paint-stained jeans, had told me I had a gift for making people feel capable. I'd gone home and cried in my car for 20 minutes. Not sad tears. The kind that come when someone sees you and it catches you off guard. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from my mother. Call me when you have a minute. We need to discuss arrangements. I stared at it for a long moment, that familiar tightness creeping into my chest. Arrangements always meant something I was expected to do. Contribute to. Show up for. I wiped the clay dust off my hands and dialed. She answered on the first ring. Natalie, finally. I've been trying to reach you all week. I hadn't missed any calls, but I didn't correct her. What's going on, Mom? Derek and Vanessa have finalized the wedding date. June 14th. The Pfister. It's going to be beautiful. Patricia's voice had that breathless quality it always took on when talking about Derek. Like he was something fragile and precious she'd been entrusted to protect. That's great, I said, meaning it. I'm really happy for him. Good, she said. Because we're going to need help with some of the logistics. Vanessa's family is covering most of it, but there are a few gaps we're trying to fill. Your father and I were hoping you could contribute toward the floral arrangements. They're quoting us at $4,500, and honestly, Natalie, it's more than we expected. I blinked. $4,500. For flowers. I had just put down first and last month's rent on a commercial space. My savings account had a comma in it, but barely. And you want me to cover that? Not all of it, she said quickly. Just help. Maybe half? Derek's your brother. This is important. I sat down on the edge of my couch, feeling the room tilt slightly. Have I gotten my invitation yet? There was a pause. A small one. But I felt it. You will, she said. Vanessa's handling all of that. She's very particular about the design. They're being custom printed. Something cold settled in my stomach, but I pushed it aside. Okay, I said. I'll see what I can do. My mother exhaled in relief. Thank you, sweetheart. I knew you'd come through. You always do. She hung up before I could say anything else. I sat there holding the phone, staring at the half-finished wall in front of me. The pale rectangle where a mirror used to hang looked like a scar. 2 weeks later, I was at my parents' house for Sunday dinner. It was supposed to be casual. Just family, my mother had said. But when I walked in, the dining table was covered in wedding binders, seating charts, and fabric samples that looked like they cost more than my monthly car payment. Vanessa was there, of course, radiant in a cream-colored sweater that probably came from a boutique I'd never heard of. Derek sat beside her, one arm draped across the back of her chair, grinning like he'd won something. "Natalie," my father said from his spot at the head of the table, barely looking up from the spreadsheet he was studying. "You're late." "I'm 5 minutes early," I said, setting down the bottle of wine I'd brought. He didn't respond. My mother fluttered over, taking the wine with a tight smile. "Oh, honey, we're doing champagne tonight. Vanessa brought some beautiful bottles from her family's vineyard trip. I'll just put this in the kitchen." She disappeared, and I stood there feeling like I'd already failed some unspoken test. Vanessa looked up at me with that smile she always wore. The one that looked warm until you realized it never reached her eyes. "Natalie, hi. We were just going over the seating arrangements. It's such a puzzle." I smiled back. "I'm sure it'll be beautiful. You've clearly put a lot of thought into everything." She tilted her head slightly. "Well, when it's the most important day of your life, you don't leave anything to chance." Derek squeezed her shoulder. "She's been amazing. Honestly, I don't know how she's kept track of all this." My mom clasped her hands together. "It's going to be the wedding of the year. I mean it. Everyone's talking about it already." I sat down across from them, feeling the familiar sensation of being in a play where everyone else had the script except me. "So," I said, trying to keep my voice light, "when do invitations go out?" Vanessa glanced at Derek, then back at me. "Oh, they went out last week." My stomach dropped. "You sent them already?" She nodded, flipping through a binder without looking at me. "We had to. The RSVP deadline is tight, and we need final numbers for the caterer." I waited for someone to say something, to acknowledge that I hadn't received one. But my mother just refilled Vanessa's champagne glass, and my father kept scrolling on his tablet. Derek looked at me for half a second, then looked away. "Maybe mine got lost in the mail," I said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to me. "What's the return address?" "I'll keep an eye out." Vanessa set down her pen, folding her hands neatly on the table. "Actually, Natalie, we're keeping the ceremony really intimate. Just immediate family and our closest friends. We wanted it to feel exclusive." "Exclusive," I repeated. She smiled that smile again. "You understand." I looked at Derek. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked at my mother. She was suddenly very interested in a napkin she was refolding. I looked at my father. He finally glanced up, his expression unreadable. "It's their day, Natalie," he said. "Let's respect their vision." The room felt like it was shrinking. My hands were cold. My face was hot. But I kept my voice steady. "So I'm not invited." Vanessa sighed, like I was being difficult. "It's not personal. We just have a very specific aesthetic we're going for. A vibe. And with limited space, we had to make some tough calls." "You're still family," my mother added quickly. "This doesn't change that. Just because you're not at the ceremony doesn't mean you're not part of things." I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound was too loud in the silence. "I need to go," I said. "Natalie," my father said, his tone sharp. "Don't make this into something it's not." I looked at Derek. "Really? You're not going to say anything?" He finally looked at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw something. Guilt, maybe. Discomfort. But then Vanessa placed her hand on his, and his face went smooth again. "It's not about you, Nat," he said. "It's about us. About what we want for our day." "Right," I said quietly. "Your day." I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair and walked out. No one followed me. Not my mother. Not my father. And definitely not Derek. I sat in my car in their driveway for 10 minutes, hands shaking on the steering wheel, waiting for someone to come outside. To knock on the window. To say they'd made a mistake. No one came. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the dinner in my head, trying to find the moment where I'd misunderstood. trying to convince myself that maybe Vanessa was right. Maybe it wasn't personal. But then I started thinking about other things. Other moments. The time Derek graduated high school and my parents threw him a huge party with a rented tent and a DJ, but when I graduated summa cum laude from college, we went to Olive Garden. The time I won a regional art competition and my mother said it was nice but asked if I'd thought about doing something more stable. The time Derek got a DUI at 22, and my father paid for the lawyer and told everyone it was a misunderstanding, but when I asked to borrow money for a kiln, he said I needed to be more financially responsible. I got out of bed and walked over to the closet where I kept old photo albums. I pulled out the one from my childhood. Page after page of family photos. Derek's soccer games. Derek's birthday parties. Derek at the lake. Derek with the dog. And then, scattered here and there, a few photos of me. Always in the background. Always slightly out of focus. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In one photo from a family vacation to Door County, I was cropped out entirely. Just my arm visible at the edge of the frame. I turned the page and found a photo missing. You could see the corners where it used to be taped down. I remembered that photo. It was from my 8th grade graduation. I'd been holding my certificate, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. Derek had been in the photo too, but he'd been off to the side, not paying attention. I'd loved that photo because for once, I was the center of it. Someone had removed it. I sat on the floor of my apartment, holding the album in my lap, and felt something crack open inside me. Not sadness. Clarity. The next morning, I called my friend Tessa. She was a wedding planner, sharp as glass and twice as clear-eyed. I told her everything. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end. Then she said, "Natalie, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not get upset with me for not saying it sooner." What? That's not a space issue. The Pfister's Grand Ballroom holds 300 people. If they're claiming it's about limited space, they're lying. My throat tightened. Maybe they booked a smaller room. I checked, Tessa said. I looked it up this morning after you texted. They booked the ballroom. 250 confirmed guests so far, based on the event listing. I felt the floor drop out from under me. So it really is just me. It's just you, Tessa said gently. And I'm so sorry. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. I went through the motions. Taught a class. Unloaded a kiln. Responded to emails. But inside, I felt like I was disappearing. On the 3rd day, I walked into a travel agency. The woman behind the desk had silver hair and glasses on a beaded chain. She looked up at me and smiled. "Where do you want to go?" "Somewhere far," I said. "Somewhere completely different. Somewhere I can't be reached unless I want to be." She pulled out a brochure. "Have you ever seen the Northern Lights?" 1 week later, I booked a 10-day trip to Iceland. Solo. I paid for it with the money I'd been setting aside for Derek's flowers. The flight left on June 13th. The day before the wedding. I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. I wanted to sit with the decision first. Let it settle. Make sure it wasn't just anger talking. But the more I thought about it, the lighter I felt. For the first time in months, I could breathe. On a Tuesday afternoon, my mother called. "Natalie, I need to know if you've sent your contribution yet. The florist needs a deposit by Friday." I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window of my studio. "I'm not contributing, Mom." "Excuse me?" Her voice went sharp. "I'm not contributing," I repeated. "And I'm not coming to the wedding." There was a beat of stunned silence. "What are you talking about?" "You have to come. Your family." "I wasn't invited," I said. "Remember? It's intimate. Exclusive. Vanessa's vision." "That's not what that meant, Natalie." Don't twist things. Then what did it mean? She sighed, that exasperated sound she always made when I asked questions she didn't want to answer. You're being dramatic. This is exactly why Vanessa wanted to keep things simple. You make everything about you. I closed my eyes. I make everything about me, I said slowly. Mom, I wasn't invited to my own brother's wedding. I wasn't in the family photos at Thanksgiving. I wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. I wasn't consulted about anything. I've been erased from this entire event, and now you're upset because I'm not paying for flowers for a wedding I'm not even allowed to attend? You are allowed, she snapped. We just didn't think you'd want to make a fuss. A fuss, I repeated. Right. Well, don't worry. I won't be making any fuss. I'll be in Iceland. What? I booked a trip, I said. I leave the day before the wedding. I'll be gone for 10 days. Natalie Marie Brennan, you will not ruin your brother's wedding with this stunt. I'm not ruining anything, I said. I'm just choosing not to sit at home feeling sorry for myself. I'm going to see the northern lights instead. You are being selfish and spiteful, and your father is going to be furious. Then I guess I'm used to that, I said. And I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From relief. From the sheer weight of finally saying no. The call came 2 days later. I was at the studio, centering a bowl on the wheel, my hands covered in slip, when my phone started buzzing across the table. I almost didn't answer. But something made me rinse my hands and check the screen. Dad. I hesitated, then swiped to answer. Hello? Natalie. His voice was measured, controlled. The tone he used when he was trying very hard not to lose his temper. We need to talk about this Iceland situation. There's nothing to talk about, I said, keeping my voice even. I bought a ticket. I'm going. You're going to embarrass this family, he said. Do you understand that? People are going to ask where you are. What are we supposed to tell them? Tell them I'm traveling, I said. Tell them I had a prior commitment. Tell them whatever you want. You've gotten very good at crafting narratives that don't include me anyway. That's uncalled for, he said sharply. This is your brother's wedding. The most important day of his life. And you're choosing to be petty. I wasn't invited, Dad. I know that doesn't seem to matter to anyone but me, but it matters. You're being deliberately obtuse, he said. You know you're welcome. No, I said. I don't know that. Because if I were welcome, I would have received an invitation. If I were welcome, someone would have asked me to be part of the planning. If I were welcome, I wouldn't have found out about the date from a group text that was clearly meant for other people. There was silence on the other end. Then he said, in that low, dangerous voice I remembered from childhood, if you do this, there will be consequences. What kind of consequences? I asked. Are you going to uninvite me from future events I'm already not invited to? He hung up. I stood there in my studio, surrounded by shelves of pottery in various stages of completion, and I felt something I hadn't expected. Not fear. Not even anger. Power. For the first time in my life, I had made a choice that was entirely mine, and they couldn't take it back. That evening, Tessa came over with Thai food and a bottle of wine. She spread the takeout containers across my coffee table and looked at me with her trademark directness. Okay, she said. Walk me through the Iceland plan. What's the actual itinerary? I pulled up the booking confirmation on my phone. Fly into Reykjavik on the 13th. 3 nights in the city. Then a Golden Circle tour, a glacier hike, and a Northern Lights chase. After that, I've got a cottage booked near Vik for 4 days. Just me, the ocean, and complete silence. She nodded slowly, scrolling through the details. This is gorgeous. And you're doing this completely solo? Completely, I said. No group tours except the Northern Lights thing. Otherwise, it's just me. She set the phone down and looked at me. How do you feel? Terrified, I admitted. And free. Like I'm about to jump off something very high and I don't know if I'll fly or fall. She smiled. That's the best kind of terrified. That's the kind that changes you. We ate in comfortable silence for a while, and then she said, "Have you thought about what happens when you get back? They're going to come at you hard." "I know," I said. "But I can't think about that right now. If I think about that, I'll talk myself out of going." "Then don't think about it," she said firmly. "Just go. Take 1,000 pictures. Drink expensive wine. Stand under the northern lights and remember that you exist outside of their narrative. You always have." I felt my eyes sting. "Thank you," I said. "For what?" "For seeing me," I said. "For not making me feel crazy for being hurt by this." Tessa reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not crazy. You're just finally done pretending it doesn't hurt." The night before my flight, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone, half expecting someone to call. To apologize. To tell me they'd made a mistake and of course I should be at the wedding. But the only message I got was from Derek. A single text at 11:47. "Mom says you're really going through with this." I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. "I am." His response came quickly. "You're being selfish. This isn't about you." I almost laughed. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "I know it's not about me," I wrote. "That's been made very clear." "Then why are you doing this?" he shot back. "Why are you trying to ruin my wedding?" "I'm not ruining anything," I typed slowly, choosing each word carefully. "I'm simply not attending an event I wasn't invited to." "You were invited," he insisted. "We told you that." "No, Derek," I said. "You told me I was still family. That's not the same thing. And even if it were, being told you're allowed to exist on the margins of someone's life isn't an invitation. It's a reminder that you don't really belong." There was a long pause. Then, "I don't know what you want from me." "I wanted you to care," I wrote. "I wanted you to notice that I wasn't on the list and think that maybe that was wrong. I wanted you to stand up to Vanessa and say that your sister should be there. But you didn't. So now I'm making my own plans." He didn't respond. I turned off my phone and buried it in my suitcase. The airport was crowded and loud, and I felt strangely invisible moving through it. I checked my bag, went through security, and found my gate with 2 hours to spare. I bought an overpriced coffee and sat by the window, watching planes take off into the gray sky. A family sat down near me, kids bouncing with excitement, parents looking exhausted but happy. The mother kept checking a list on her phone, muttering about passports and boarding passes. The father ruffled the youngest kid's hair and said something that made them all laugh. I looked away. My phone was still off. I imagined what was happening back home. My mother probably ironing tablecloths. My father reviewing seating charts. Derek and Vanessa doing last-minute fittings or tastings or whatever people did the day before their wedding. And me, about to board a plane in the opposite direction. The gate agent called for boarding. I stood, grabbed my carry-on, and joined the line. As I handed over my boarding pass, I felt my chest tighten. Not with regret. With anticipation. I was really doing this. The flight was long and uncomfortable, but I didn't mind. I watched 3 movies I'd never heard of, ate the weird little airline meals, and slept in short, fitful bursts. When I woke for the last time, the sun was rising over the Atlantic, turning the clouds into something molten and golden. I pressed my forehead against the cold window and felt something loosen in my chest. By the time we landed in Reykjavik, it was mid-afternoon. The air was shockingly cold and clean, and the light had a strange quality to it, like everything was slightly overexposed. I took a cab to my hotel, a small boutique place near the harbor, and checked in. The woman at the desk smiled warmly and handed me a key. "You're here for the lights?" She had a musical accent that made every word sound like a question. I nodded. And just to get away. She tilted her head, understanding in her eyes. Best reason to come. I dragged my suitcase up to the third floor and opened the door to a tiny, perfect room with a view of the water. I dropped everything, kicked off my shoes, and lay flat on the bed. My phone was still off. I left it that way. That evening, I walked through the city alone. The streets were narrow and colorful, lined with shops selling wool sweaters and lava rocks. I stopped at a small cafe and ordered something I couldn't pronounce. It turned out to be fish stew, rich and buttery, with bread so fresh it was still warm. I ate slowly, watching people pass by outside. Couples holding hands. Families with strollers. Solo travelers like me, clutching maps and cameras. No one knew me here. No one expected anything from me. I could be anyone. Or no one. Both felt like relief. After dinner, I wandered down to the harbor and stood at the edge, looking out at the dark water. The wind cut through my jacket, but I didn't move. I thought about what was happening back in Milwaukee. The rehearsal dinner. Everyone gathered at Lake Park Bistro, toasting Derek and Vanessa, laughing at inside jokes I wouldn't understand. My mother probably told people I was sick. Or busy with work. Or some other polite lie that didn't make the family look bad. I pulled out my phone and turned it on. It took a moment to connect, and then the notifications started flooding in. Texts. Emails. Missed calls. I scrolled through them quickly. Most were from my mother. A few from my father. One from Derek. Nothing apologetic. Nothing kind. Just variations of how dare you and you've ruined everything and we can't believe you'd be this cruel. I opened Derek's message. It was long. A wall of text that started with I don't even know who you are anymore and ended with don't bother coming back into our lives. I read it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. He was right. I wasn't the same person anymore. The version of me who would have swallowed this, who would have stayed home quietly and pretended it didn't hurt, that person was gone. I turned the phone off again and slipped it back into my pocket. The next morning was the wedding. I woke early, made coffee in the little machine in my room, and sat by the window watching the sun come up over the water. It was June 14th. Back home, my brother was probably getting ready. Vanessa was probably surrounded by bridesmaids and makeup artists. My parents were probably putting on their best clothes, preparing to smile for photographs that I would never be in. And I was here. Alone. Free. I spent the morning walking. I climbed up to Hallgrímskirkja, the massive church that loomed over the city, and stood at the top looking out over the rooftops. The wind was relentless, but the view was worth it. I took a photo. Not for anyone else. Just for me. A reminder that I had chosen this. That I was here, living my life, while they lived theirs. In the afternoon, I joined a small group for the Golden Circle tour. There were maybe 10 of us. A couple from Germany. A woman traveling alone from Japan. 2 college kids from Australia. The guide was funny and warm, telling stories about trolls and hidden people as we drove through landscapes that didn't look real. We stopped at Thingvellir, where you could see the rift between 2 tectonic plates. I stood at the edge, looking down into the crack in the earth, and thought about how appropriate it was. A literal divide. The guide said something about how Iceland was being pulled apart, slowly, over centuries. One side drifting toward America. The other toward Europe. I wondered which side I was on. By the time we got back to the city, it was evening. The wedding would be over by now. The ceremony finished. The reception in full swing. I imagined the speeches, the first dance, the cake cutting. I imagined my mother dabbing her eyes with a tissue. My father clapping Derek on the back. Vanessa glowing in whatever dress she'd chosen. And I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not anger. Just distance. I checked my phone one more time before turning it off for the night. There was a new message. But not from my family. It was from a number I didn't recognize. Hi Natalie. This is Iris, Vanessa's sister. I don't know if you remember me. We met once at a family thing last year. I just wanted to say I think what they did to you was wrong. I told Vanessa that. She didn't listen. Anyway. I hope you're okay. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back. Thank you. That means more than you know. Her response came quickly. For what it's worth, you're not the only one who sees it. I'm at this wedding right now and all I can think about is how messed up this whole thing is. I smiled, a small, sad smile. Glad I'm not there then. She sent back a laughing emoji. Honestly? I wish I wasn't either. The Northern Lights tour was scheduled for the next night. We drove out of the city in a big van, about 20 of us bundled in coats and scarves. The guide kept checking his phone, monitoring the aurora forecast. We stopped in a field far from any light pollution, and everyone climbed out into the freezing darkness. At first, there was nothing. Just stars. So many stars I couldn't process them all. People stood around awkwardly, stamping their feet to stay warm, murmuring to each other in different languages. And then someone gasped. I looked up. The sky was moving. Green light rippled across the blackness like water, like silk, like something alive. It twisted and pulsed, shifting from pale jade to deep emerald, and for a moment I forgot to breathe. Everyone around me was taking photos, holding up phones and cameras, trying to capture it. But I just stood there, head tilted back, letting it wash over me. The guide had said the lights were caused by particles colliding. Solar wind meeting atmosphere. A violent interaction that created something beautiful. I thought about that. About how sometimes the most stunning things come from friction. From resistance. From refusing to blend in. I pulled out my phone and took one photo. Just one. Me, in my thick coat and wool hat, face tilted toward the sky, the green light shimmering behind me. I looked small in the frame. But I was there. Undeniably, completely there. I posted it to my Instagram with a single line. Turns out, some things are worth missing a wedding for. I didn't tag anyone. Didn't add context. Just let it exist. Within an hour, the notifications started. Comments. Messages. Most from people I hadn't talked to in years. Whoa, where are you? This is incredible. Wait, weren't you supposed to be at your brother's wedding? And then, buried in the chaos, a message from my mother. How dare you? How dare you post that today? You've made this entire day about yourself. You've humiliated this family. I didn't respond. I didn't block her. I just closed the app and slipped my phone into my pocket. Around me, people were still staring at the sky, murmuring in awe. The lights had started to fade, but every few minutes they'd flare back to life, brighter than before. A woman standing near me, the solo traveler from Japan, caught my eye and smiled. Beautiful, yes? Yes, I said. She nodded toward my phone. You share with someone special? I thought about that. Then I smiled. I shared it with me. When I got back to the hotel that night, I sat on the edge of my bed and finally let myself cry. Not because I was sad. But because I'd spent so long believing that being excluded meant I was the problem. That if I just tried harder, loved better, bent further, they'd see me. But standing under those lights, I'd realized something. I didn't need them to see me. I could see myself. And that was enough. The next few days blurred together in the best way. I hiked across a glacier, the ice beneath my boots older than I could comprehend. I stood at the edge of waterfalls that roared so loud I couldn't hear my own thoughts. I ate alone in tiny restaurants where the staff didn't speak much English but smiled anyway. I drove along the southern coast to the cottage in Vik, a little wooden structure perched on a hill overlooking black sand beaches. For 4 days, I did nothing. I read books. I made coffee. I walked along the beach, the wind howling around me, the waves crashing so hard the ground shook. I didn't check my phone. Didn't post anything. Didn't reach out to anyone. I just existed. And it was the most peaceful I'd ever felt. On my last morning in Iceland, I woke before dawn and walked down to the beach one more time. The sky was that deep purple blue that comes right before sunrise. The ocean was wild, frothing white against the black sand. I stood there, hands shoved deep in my pockets, and thought about going home. About what I'd be walking back into. The anger. The accusations. The certainty that I was the villain in their story. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Because I'd proven something to myself. That I could choose me. That I could walk away from people who didn't value me and not only survive, but thrive. The sun started to rise, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked unreal. I took a deep breath of the cold, salt air. And then I turned around and walked back to the cottage. It was time to go home. Not to them. But to myself. To the life I was building. The one they had no part in. The flight back felt different. I wasn't running anymore. I was returning. Grounded. Sure. When we landed in Milwaukee, I turned on my phone and watched the messages load. There were dozens. But this time, I didn't read them all. I scrolled until I found the one from Tessa. Welcome home. Coffee tomorrow? I smiled and typed back. Yes. I have so much to tell you. Then I grabbed my bag, walked through the terminal, and stepped out into the humid June air. It smelled like home. But it didn't feel like a trap anymore. It felt like a starting point. The studio felt different when I walked back in. Quieter, maybe. Or maybe I was just hearing it differently. I unlocked the door, flipped on the lights, and stood in the center of the room, taking it in. The wheel in the corner. The shelves lined with unfired pieces waiting for the kiln. The smell of clay and dust and something earthy that always clung to the air. This was mine. I had built this. And nobody could take it away. I spent the first day back doing nothing but work. Wedging clay. Trimming bowls. Glazing a set of mugs I'd thrown the week before I left. My hands moved through the familiar motions, and my mind stayed blissfully blank. I didn't check my phone. Didn't listen to voicemails. Didn't open emails. I just worked. By the time the sun started to set, my back ached and my fingers were raw, but I felt clean. Hollowed out in a good way. Tessa showed up just after 7 with pizza and that look on her face that meant she had questions but wasn't going to push. We sat on the floor, backs against the wall, eating straight from the box. So, she said finally. How was it? Life-changing, I said. And I meant it. She nodded slowly, chewing. Good. You look different. Do I? She studied me for a moment. Yeah. Calmer. Like you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I laughed softly. Maybe I'm not. We ate in silence for a bit, and then she said, have you talked to any of them yet? No, I said. And I don't plan to. Not until I'm ready. And when will that be? I don't know, I admitted. Maybe never. She didn't tell me I was being dramatic. Didn't suggest I needed to be the bigger person. She just nodded and handed me another slice. The messages started escalating 2 days after I got back. My mother called 6 times in one afternoon. When I didn't answer, she started texting. We need to talk about your behavior. This silent treatment is childish. Your brother is devastated. Then my father. Short, clipped messages that felt like commands. Call your mother. This has gone on long enough. You owe this family an explanation. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I went through my phone and did something I'd never had the courage to do before. I muted their numbers. Not blocked. Just muted. I wasn't ready to cut the cord entirely, but I also wasn't going to let them invade my peace every time they decided I owed them something. The relief was immediate. My phone stopped buzzing every 5 minutes. The knot in my stomach loosened. I could breathe again. On the third day, Derek called. I almost didn't notice because of the mute, but I happened to glance at my screen and saw his name. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I let it go to voicemail. 10 minutes later, I played the message. His voice was tight. Angry. Nat, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but it's not funny anymore. You embarrassed us. You made our wedding about you. And now you won't even have the guts to face what you did? Vanessa's upset. Mom's a mess. Dad won't even talk about you. You've turned yourself into the villain here, and for what? Some stupid trip? Grow up. Call me back. I deleted the message. Then I went back to work. By the end of the week, the anger had shifted to something else. Bargaining. My mother left a voicemail that started with, "I know you're upset, sweetie, but we really should sit down and talk about this like adults. There are things you don't understand. Context you're missing." She made it sound like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Like if she could just explain it to me properly, I'd see reason and apologize. I didn't call back. Instead, I started going through old photos again. Not the family albums this time. My own. Pictures from college. From trips I'd taken with friends. From art shows and pottery classes and random Tuesday afternoons when I'd felt happy. In none of them did my family appear. It wasn't that I'd excluded them. They just had never been there. Not at my gallery opening 3 years ago. Not at my graduate showcase. Not when I'd won a local arts grant. I'd always told myself they were busy. That Derek had work. That my parents had other commitments. But looking at the photos now, I realized the truth. They hadn't come because they didn't think it mattered. I mattered to them only when I was useful. When I could contribute. Support. Prop up their narrative. The moment I stepped outside that role, I became inconvenient. Difficult. Selfish. I closed the photo app and sat with that realization for a long time. On Sunday, exactly 1 week after the wedding, someone knocked on the studio door. I wasn't expecting anyone. The studio wasn't officially open on Sundays. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked over, peering through the glass. It was Vanessa. She stood on the sidewalk in a white sundress and oversized sunglasses, looking like she'd just stepped out of a lifestyle blog. Her hair was perfect. "You just didn't care enough to do anything about it." "That's not fair," she said, her voice rising. "I have always loved you. Just not the same way you love Derek," I said quietly. "And that's the problem. You loved me when it was convenient. When I didn't ask for too much. When I stayed quiet and helpful and grateful. But the moment I needed something, the moment I asked to be seen, you made me feel like I was asking for too much." My mother's face was red now. "You don't understand the pressure I've been under. Managing everyone's feelings. Trying to keep everyone happy. I'm sorry you felt left out, Natalie, but you're not the only person in this family." "I know," I said. "But I should have been a person in this family. And I wasn't." She stared at me, and for a moment I thought she might actually hear me. Might actually understand. But then she shook her head. "I didn't come here to be attacked. I came here to tell you that if you want to be part of this family, you need to apologize. To Derek. To Vanessa. To all of us." "For what?" I asked. "For embarrassing us. For making everything about you. For that stunt you pulled in Iceland." "I didn't pull a stunt," I said. "I went on a trip. One that I'm not apologizing for. Then don't expect us to welcome you back," she said coldly. You've made your choice. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something inside me finally let go. You're right, I said. I have made my choice. And it's me. I choose me. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She turned and walked back to her car without another word. I stood there, watching her drive away, and I didn't cry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt lighter. Like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long I'd forgotten what it felt like to put it down. I walked back inside, washed my hands, and returned to my student. She looked up at me, concerned. Everything okay? Yeah, I said, smiling. Everything's fine. Let's finish this bowl. 2 months after the wedding, I started noticing something strange. People I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly reaching out. Distant cousins. Old family friends. People who'd been at the wedding. At first, the messages were casual. Hey, haven't talked in forever. How have you been? But then they'd shift. So I heard about the wedding situation. That must have been hard. Or, I saw your Iceland photos. Looked amazing. Wish I'd done something like that instead of going to the reception. It took me a few conversations to realize what was happening. The cracks were showing. The perfect wedding, the flawless family image, it was starting to crumble. And people were noticing. One message in particular stuck with me. It was from my cousin Lauren, someone I'd been close to as a kid but had drifted from over the years. She sent me a long text late one night. Nat, I need to tell you something. I was at the wedding. And the whole time, all I could think about was how weird it was that you weren't there. When I asked your mom where you were, she got all tight-lipped and said you had a prior commitment. But then Vanessa's sister Iris told a few of us the truth. That you weren't invited. And honestly, it made me see your family differently. The whole day felt off after that. Like we were all pretending something was normal when it clearly wasn't. Anyway. I just wanted you to know that some of us saw it. And some of us think you did the right thing. I read that message 3 times. Then I saved it. Not because I needed validation, but because it was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy. That other people had seen what I'd seen. That the dysfunction wasn't invisible, even if my family wanted to pretend it was. The studio was doing better than I'd ever imagined. Word of mouth had spread, and I was fully booked for the next 2 months. I'd hired an assistant, a quiet art student named Marcus who had a gift for glazing and didn't ask personal questions. We worked in comfortable silence most days, the rhythm of the wheel and the scrape of tools filling the space. I'd started offering private sessions too, one-on-one classes for people who wanted to learn but were intimidated by groups. It was in one of those sessions that I met Catherine. She was in her late 50s, silver hair pulled back in a loose bun, hands that moved carefully over the clay like she was afraid to break it. We didn't talk much the first session. But during the second, as she struggled to center a stubborn lump of clay, she said quietly, "My daughter didn't invite me to her baby shower." I looked up. Catherine kept her eyes on the wheel. She said it was a friends-only thing. That she wanted to keep it small and casual. But then I saw the photos on Facebook. 60 people. Her mother-in-law was there. Her aunts. Everyone except me. I didn't know what to say, so I just said, "I'm sorry." She nodded, still focused on the clay. I told myself it didn't matter. That I was being sensitive. But it's been 3 months and I still think about it every day. I walked over and gently adjusted her hands on the clay. Sometimes people exclude us because it's easier than dealing with whatever complicated feelings they have. It doesn't make it right. But it's not about us. It's about them. She looked up at me, eyes wet. How do you stop it from hurting? I don't know that you do, I said honestly. But you can decide it doesn't define you. She smiled, small and sad. You sound like you know what you're talking about. I shrugged. I'm learning. That afternoon, after Catherine left, I sat in the studio scrolling through my phone. I'd been avoiding social media for weeks, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened Instagram and went to Derek's page. He'd posted a few photos from the honeymoon. Vanessa in a white bikini on a beach somewhere tropical. The two of them holding cocktails with tiny umbrellas. A sunset shot with the caption, "Paradise with my forever person." The comments were full of heart emojis and congratulations. But when I scrolled further, I found something interesting. A post from 3 weeks ago. A photo of Derek alone, standing on a dock at sunset. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to cut out the negativity to protect your peace." The comments on that one were different. "What happened? Is everything okay? Sending love." And then, buried halfway down, a comment from Uncle Frank. "Negativity, or accountability?" I screenshotted it. Then I kept scrolling. Vanessa's page was a carefully curated gallery of their life. Matching outfits. Coordinated photo shoots. Sponsored posts for skincare and activewear. But in the last few weeks, the comments had shifted. There were still plenty of supportive ones, but sprinkled throughout were questions. "Where's Derek's sister? Didn't she used to be in your posts?" And one that made me smile despite myself. "Excluding family from your wedding is such a red flag." I closed the app and set my phone down. I wasn't interested in revenge. I didn't want to watch their lives fall apart. But I also wasn't going to pretend I didn't notice the shift. The way people were starting to see through the performance. A week later, Tessa called me while I was closing up the studio. "I need to tell you something," she said, "and you're not going to like it." "What?" "Vanessa reached out to me. She wants to hire me." I stopped locking the door. "For what?" "She's planning some kind of vow renewal thing. 6 months after the wedding. She said she wants it to be even bigger and more meaningful than the first one." I leaned against the doorframe. "Are you going to do it?" "Hell no," Tessa said. I told her I was booked. "But Nat," she tried to pump me for information about you. Asked if you'd said anything about the wedding. If you'd seemed upset. I laughed, a sharp sound. "What did you tell her?" "I told her you seemed great. That you'd been traveling and working and seemed happier than I'd seen you in years." She didn't like that. There was a pause. She asked if I thought you'd come to the vow renewal if she invited you. "What did you say?" I said I had no idea, but that it wasn't my place to speak for you. Tessa sighed. "She's scrambling, Nat. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but something's off." I thought about that. "Thanks for telling me." "Of course," Tessa said. "And just so you know, if she asks again, I'm blocking her number." I smiled. "You're a good friend." "I know," she said. "Now go home and drink some wine. You've earned it." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Vanessa's question. Would I go to a vow renewal if I were invited? 6 months ago, I might have said yes. I might have convinced myself it was a chance to reconcile. To prove I wasn't holding a grudge. But now? Now I knew better. An invitation wouldn't be an apology. It would be an attempt to rewrite the narrative. To show the world that everything was fine, that I'd been welcomed back into the fold, that there had never been any real conflict. It would be using me to clean up their image. And I wasn't interested in being a prop. I got out of bed and made tea, standing by the window looking out at the empty street. My phone buzzed. A text from Iris. "Hey, weird question. Did Vanessa reach out to you?" "No," I typed back. "Why?" "She's been acting strange lately. Asking me questions about you. If I've talked to you. What you've been saying. I think she's worried." "About what?" "That people are talking," Iris wrote. "Because they are. I've heard it from at least 5 people. Questions about why you weren't at the wedding. Comments about how it was weird. Vanessa's trying to control the narrative, but it's not working. I stared at the message. Then I typed, "What do you think I should do?" "Nothing," Iris replied immediately. "Let her spin. You don't owe her damage control." I smiled. "You're right." "Damn right I am," she sent back. "Now go to bed. You have a business to run." I took her advice. I put my phone on silent, finished my tea, and went back to bed. And for the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking up once. The next morning, I got an email. The subject line read, "An opportunity for reconciliation." I almost deleted it without reading. But something made me open it. It was from Vanessa. Long, carefully worded, full of phrases like moving forward and healing as a family. She said she'd been reflecting on the wedding and realized there had been misunderstandings on both sides. She said she wanted to extend an olive branch. That she and Derek were planning a small family gathering in a few weeks, just close relatives, and they'd love for me to come. She ended with, "I know we got off on the wrong foot, but I truly believe we can start fresh. You're important to Derek, and that makes you important to me." I read it twice. Then I closed my laptop and went to work. I didn't respond. Not that day. Not that week. I let it sit, unacknowledged, while I focused on the things that actually mattered. My students. My art. The life I was building. 10 days later, she sent a follow-up. "Just checking in. Did you get my email? I hope we can talk soon." I opened it, read it, and closed it again. Still didn't respond. On the 12th day, she called. I let it go to voicemail. "Natalie, hi, it's Vanessa. I just wanted to make sure you got my messages. I know things have been complicated, but I really think if we could just sit down and talk, we could work through this. Please call me back." I deleted the voicemail. Then I called Iris. "She's relentless," I said. "What do I do?" Iris laughed. "Nothing. That's what's driving her crazy. She's used to people responding. Jumping when she says jump. You're not playing the game and she doesn't know how to handle it. But what if she keeps pushing?" "Then you set a boundary," Iris said. "A real one. Tell her you're not interested in reconciling on her terms. Or don't tell her anything. Sometimes silence is the loudest answer." I thought about that. "You're really good at this." "Years of practice," she said dryly. "Welcome to the club of people who don't fit Vanessa's aesthetic." 2 weeks later, I got a text from Derek. "We need to talk." I stared at it, my stomach tight. Then I typed back, "About what?" "About you ignoring Vanessa. About you shutting out this family. About the fact that you've turned into someone I don't even recognize." I felt anger flare, hot and immediate. But I took a breath and typed carefully. "I'm not shutting anyone out. I'm just not available to be treated the way I was anymore." "You weren't treated anyway," he shot back. "You made a choice to skip my wedding and now you're acting like you're the victim." "I wasn't invited, Derek. You know that. You were invited. Vanessa told you that. Being told I'm still family isn't the same as being invited. And you know it." There was a long pause. Then, "Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to destroy my marriage before it's even started?" "I'm not doing anything," I wrote. "I'm living my life. If that bothers you, that's something you need to figure out." He didn't respond. I put my phone down and went back to wedging clay, my hands working the frustration out with every fold and press. That night, Uncle Frank called. I almost didn't answer. We hadn't talked much since I was a kid. But something made me pick up. "Natalie," he said, his voice warm and gruff. "I heard about the wedding. I wanted to check in." "I'm okay," I said. "Are you?" I thought about it. "Yeah. I actually am." "Good," he said. "Because I'll be honest with you, kiddo. I've been watching your parents handle you and your brother for years, and it's never sat right with me. What do you mean? He sighed. Your dad's my brother, and I love him. But he's always played favorites. And your mom enables it. Derek's the golden child and you're the responsible one. The one who doesn't need attention. The one who'll be fine no matter what. I felt my throat tighten. You saw that? Of course I saw it, he said. Everyone saw it. We just didn't say anything. And I regret that. I should have spoken up. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, Frank said. I just wanted you to know that you're not crazy. And you're not alone. If you ever need anything, I'm here. Thank you, I whispered. He cleared his throat. Now tell me about this pottery thing. I hear you're killing it. I laughed, and we talked for an hour. About the studio. About Iceland. About clay and glazes and the way creating something with your hands could heal parts of you that you didn't even know were broken. When we hung up, I felt lighter. Not because he'd solved anything. But because he'd seen me. Really seen me. And that mattered more than I'd realized. The family gathering Vanessa had mentioned came and went. I didn't go. I didn't respond to the invitation. I didn't acknowledge it at all. And the silence that followed was deafening. My mother sent a single text. You've made your position clear. My father sent nothing. Derek unfollowed me on every platform. And Vanessa posted a photo from the gathering with the caption, surrounded by the people who matter most. I looked at the photo once. My parents were there. A few aunts and uncles. Vanessa's family. Everyone smiling, holding glasses of wine, looking like a stock photo of familial bliss. And I felt nothing. No jealousy. No regret. Just a quiet certainty that I'd made the right choice. I closed the app and went outside. The summer air was thick and warm, and the city hummed with life around me. I walked to the lakefront and sat on a bench, watching the water catch the light. Somewhere across town, my family was gathered without me. Pretending everything was fine. Pretending I'd never existed. And for the first time, I was okay with that. Because I'd spent my whole life trying to earn a place at their table. And I'd finally realized I didn't want it. I wanted my own table. One where I didn't have to beg to be seen. One where my presence wasn't conditional. One where I could just be. And I was building it. One day. One choice. One boundary at a time. For months after the wedding, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Hello? Natalie Brennan? This is Monica Caldwell from Lakefront Arts Magazine. We're doing a feature on emerging artists in Milwaukee and your name came up. Someone recommended we check out your work. I sat up straighter, my heart picking up speed. Oh. Wow. Thank you. I'd love to set up a time to visit your studio, if you're open to it. We're particularly interested in artists who are building community through their practice. I heard you offer classes. I do, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. When were you thinking? How's next Tuesday? We chatted for a few more minutes, hammering out details, and when I hung up I just sat there staring at the wall. A magazine feature. A real one. I called Tessa immediately. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. This is huge, she said. This is exactly the kind of exposure that changes everything. I know, I said. I'm terrified. Good, she replied. Terror means it matters. Now go clean your studio and don't you dare downplay your work when they get there. The interview happened on a Tuesday morning. Monica showed up with a photographer, a young woman with bright red hair and a camera that looked like it cost more than my car. They spent 2 hours at the studio, photographing my pieces, watching me work, asking questions about my process and my philosophy. Monica was sharp and thoughtful, asking things like what does it mean to you to create space for people who don't think of themselves as artists? I'd never really articulated it before, but standing there in my studio, hands still dusty with clay, I found the words. I think a lot of people go through life believing they're not creative. That art is for other people. People who are naturally talented or went to fancy schools. But everyone has the capacity to make something beautiful. They just need permission. And space. And someone to tell them it's okay if it's messy. She wrote that down word for word. The feature came out 3 weeks later. 2 full pages, with photos of my work and a quote pulled out in large text across the center spread. Everyone has the capacity to make something beautiful. They just need permission. Natalie Brennan is giving them that permission. I cried when I saw it. Not sad tears. Proud ones. The day after the article came out, my phone didn't stop. Inquiries about classes. People wanting to buy pieces. A local gallery reaching out about a possible show. And buried in the notifications, a text from my mother. I saw the article. It was nice. That was it. No congratulations. No, I'm proud of you. Just nice. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to text back something cutting. Something that would make her feel the weight of everything she'd missed. But I didn't. I just deleted the message and put my phone away. She didn't get to have this moment. It wasn't hers. That evening, Iris called. Did you see what Vanessa posted? No, I said. Should I? Iris made a disgusted sound. She screenshotted your magazine article and posted it on her story with the caption, "So proud of my sister-in-law for following her dreams." Like she had anything to do with it. I laughed, sharp and surprised. Of course she did. It's infuriating, Iris said. She didn't even tag you. Just made it about her. About how supportive and gracious she is. I took a breath. It's fine. Let her have it. You're not mad? I was, I admitted. For about 5 seconds. But then I realized she's doing exactly what I expected. She sees something good happening for me and she wants to attach herself to it. But it doesn't change anything. The article exists whether she posts about it or not. Iris was quiet for a moment. You've really changed, you know that? I smiled. Good. 2 weeks later, I got an email from Derek. The subject line was "We need to talk," and I knew before opening it that this wasn't going to be an apology. I was right. Natalie, I don't know what kind of point you're trying to prove, but this has gone on long enough. You've made your statement. You've gotten your attention. Now it's time to move on. Vanessa and I are willing to let this go if you are. We're family. That has to mean something. Mom's birthday is next month and it would mean a lot to her if you came. Let's put this behind us. I read it 3 times, feeling my chest tighten with each pass. He really thought this was about attention. About making a point. He couldn't conceive of the possibility that I'd simply chosen myself over them. That I didn't want back in. I typed a response, deleted it, typed another. Finally, I settled on something simple. Derek, I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm just living my life. I hope you and Vanessa are happy. But I won't be coming to Mom's birthday or any other family events. Not because I'm angry, but because I've realized that the cost of being in this family is too high. I'm not willing to pay it anymore. I wish you well. I hit send before I could second guess myself. His response came less than 5 minutes later. You're really going to throw away your whole family over one wedding? It wasn't one wedding, I wrote back. It was a lifetime of being overlooked. The wedding was just the moment I finally saw it clearly. He didn't respond after that. Mom's birthday came and went. I didn't send a card. Didn't call. Didn't acknowledge it at all. I spent the day teaching a workshop on hand-building techniques, and when I got home that night, exhausted and happy, I saw that I had 7 missed calls from my mother and 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to them. I'd learned by now that nothing she said would be what I needed to hear. The next morning, she sent a long text. I don't understand what I did to deserve this treatment. I have loved you your entire life. I have sacrificed for you. Supported you. And this is how you repay me? By abandoning your family? By refusing to even acknowledge my birthday? You've become cruel, Natalie. Selfish and cruel. And I don't know who raised you to be this way, but it certainly wasn't me. I read it sitting at my kitchen table, coffee going cold in my hands. And I felt something I'd never felt before when dealing with my mother. Pity. She genuinely believed what she was saying. She couldn't see the contradiction. Couldn't recognize that love without respect, without consideration, without basic acknowledgement wasn't really love at all. It was control dressed up in softer language. I didn't respond to that message either. Instead, I blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's. Then Derek's. Not out of anger. Out of self-preservation. I was done waiting for them to understand. Done hoping they'd change. Done leaving the door open for them to walk through and hurt me again. The gallery show happened in early November. A small space in the 3rd ward, white walls and good lighting, and my work displayed like it mattered. Because it did. The opening was on a Friday night, and I'd invited everyone who'd supported me. Tessa came with her husband. Marcus brought his girlfriend. Catherine was there, beaming with pride like she'd made the pieces herself. Uncle Frank drove in from Madison and stood in front of my largest sculpture, a towering piece called Reconstruction, nodding slowly. "This is something, kiddo," he said. "This is really something." Iris showed up too, and she brought 3 of her friends, none of whom knew Vanessa or Derek. We stood in the corner drinking cheap wine and laughing, and for the first time in my life, I felt surrounded by people who'd chosen me. Not because we shared blood, but because they actually saw me. Halfway through the night, the gallery owner pulled me aside. "Someone's asking for you," she said, gesturing toward the entrance. My stomach dropped. I turned and saw Vanessa standing by the door. She was dressed impeccably as always, hair perfect, makeup flawless. But something about her looked smaller than I remembered. Diminished. I walked over slowly. "Vanessa." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Hi. This is beautiful. Your work is really impressive." "Thank you." She glanced around, taking in the crowd, the red dots next to half the pieces indicating they'd sold. "You've done really well for yourself." I waited. She shifted her weight. "Look, I know things have been tense. And I take responsibility for my part in that. I should have handled the wedding differently. I should have communicated better. I'm sorry." I studied her face. It was a good performance. Practiced. But there was something missing. Sincerity. "What do you want, Vanessa?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, why are you here?" She straightened her shoulders. "I'm here because you're family. And I think it's time we moved past this. Derek misses you. Your parents miss you. We all do." I shook my head slowly. "No, you don't. You miss the version of me that didn't ask questions. That didn't push back. That made your life easier by staying quiet. But that person's gone." Her jaw tightened. "I came here to apologize. I don't know what else you want from me." "I don't want anything from you," I said quietly. "That's what you don't understand. I'm not holding out for some grand gesture. I'm not waiting for you to fix this. I've moved on." She looked genuinely confused. "So that's it? You're just going to cut us all off?" "I'm not cutting anyone off," I said. "I'm just not participating anymore. There's a difference." Vanessa stared at me for a long moment. Then she said, "You know what? Fine. If this is how you want to be, fine. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you've lost. I won't, I said. She turned and walked out, heels clicking sharply on the concrete floor. Iris appeared at my elbow. You okay? Yeah, I said. I really am. She handed me a fresh glass of wine. Good. Because you've got buyers to talk to. I smiled and followed her back into the warmth of the gallery, leaving Vanessa and everything she represented behind. Christmas came quietly. I spent it at Uncle Frank's house with a collection of people I'd never met but who welcomed me like I belonged. We ate too much, laughed too loud, and didn't once talk about the people who weren't there. On Christmas morning, I woke up to a text from Iris. Merry Christmas. Just so you know, the family gathering last night was a disaster. Derek and Vanessa fought the whole time. Your mom cried. Your dad left early. I think they're finally realizing that pretending you don't exist doesn't actually make the problem go away. I wrote back. That sounds exhausting. She replied immediately. It was. I left early too. I'm at my girlfriend's now. Way better vibe. I smiled. Merry Christmas, Iris. You too, Nat. I'm proud of you. That message sat with me all day. Someone was proud of me. Not for shrinking. Not for accommodating. But for standing firm. In January, the studio hit a milestone. 1 year since I'd signed the lease. I threw a small party, just my regulars and a few friends, and we spent the evening making whatever we wanted on the wheels, laughing at the lopsided bowls and collapsed vases. Marcus made a toast. To Natalie, who taught us all that it's okay to make a mess. Everyone cheered, and I felt something crack open in my chest. Not pain. Joy. Real, uncomplicated joy. Later, when everyone had gone home and I was cleaning up, I found myself thinking about the version of me who'd sat in my parents' dining room 9 months ago, feeling small and invisible. That version of me had thought she needed their approval to matter. Had believed that family was something you had to earn. But I knew better now. Family wasn't something you earned. It was something you chose. And sometimes, the people you chose weren't the ones you were born to. Sometimes, they were the ones who showed up. Who saw you. Who celebrated your wins and held space for your losses. Who didn't make you shrink to make room for someone else. I turned off the lights and locked the door, stepping out into the cold January night. My phone buzzed. A text from Tessa. Saw your Instagram story. The party looked amazing. You've built something really special. I typed back. I know. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. She replied with a heart. Then added, also I have news. Vanessa's vow renewal got cancelled. Word is they're having problems. I stared at the message. Then I typed, I hope they figure it out. And I meant it. Not because I'd forgiven them. But because their struggles weren't mine to carry anymore. Spring arrived slowly, then all at once. The city thawed. Flowers pushed through the soil. And I started working on a new series. Pieces about transformation. About breaking and rebuilding. About the space between who you were and who you're becoming. I called the series Unburdened. One afternoon in late April, I was loading the kiln when someone knocked on the studio door. I looked up and saw my father standing outside. My stomach clenched. I considered not opening the door. But curiosity won. I unlocked it but didn't invite him in. Dad. Natalie. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. He walked past me, hands in his pockets, looking around at the shelves of pottery, the wheels, the kiln in the corner. This is nice, he said. You've done well. Thank you. We stood in awkward silence. Then he said, your mother wanted me to come. To talk to you. About Mom's birthday, I guessed. He shook his head. About Thanksgiving. She wants to know if you'll come. I crossed my arms. Why would I do that? Because you're family, he said, like it was obvious. I shook my head slowly. I used to think that mattered. That being family meant something inherent. But it doesn't. Not on its own. He frowned. I don't understand. I know, I said. That's the problem. Dad, I'm not coming to Thanksgiving. Or Christmas. Or any other holiday. Not because I'm punishing you. But because I don't want to. He looked genuinely baffled. But we're your family. You're related to us. That doesn't mean I have to have a relationship with you, I said. He stared at me. Then he said, in a low voice, you've changed. I have, I agreed. And I'm not apologizing for it. He shook his head. I don't know what happened to you. You used to be so easy. So agreeable. I was miserable, I said. I was erasing myself to make room for everyone else. And I'm done doing that. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then, is there anything I can say that would change your mind? I thought about it. Honestly? No. I don't think there is. Not because you couldn't say the right thing. But because I don't trust that anything would actually change. And I'm not interested in going back to a place where I have to constantly prove I deserve basic respect. He nodded slowly. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Before he left, he paused. For what it's worth, he said without looking at me, I'm sorry you feel that way. I almost laughed. Even his apology put the blame on me. It's not about how I feel, Dad. It's about how I was treated. He left without responding. Summer came, hot and bright. The studio thrived. I taught workshops. Sold pieces. Started mentoring a young artist who reminded me of myself at 22, uncertain and hungry for validation. I told her what I wished someone had told me. You don't need anyone's permission to take up space. Your work matters because you made it. Not because someone else decided it was good enough. She cried. I understood why. In August, I got an invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock, elegant script. Derek and Vanessa were renewing their vows after all. The ceremony was set for September. I opened it standing in my kitchen, reading the words that were clearly chosen carefully. We would be honored if you would join us as we celebrate our love and commitment. I set it on the counter and left it there for 3 days. On the 4th day, I wrote a single sentence on the RSVP card. I wish you both well, but I won't be attending. I dropped it in the mail and didn't think about it again. September arrived. The morning of the vow renewal, I woke early and went for a run along the lake. The air was crisp, autumn creeping in at the edges of summer. When I got back to my apartment, I showered, made coffee, and spent the day in the studio. I threw 6 bowls. Trimmed a set of mugs. Glazed pieces for the kiln. At some point, I realized I hadn't thought about the ceremony once. Not what they were wearing. Not who was there. Not whether they'd noticed my absence. I'd simply let it exist without me. That evening, Iris texted. It's done. The vow renewal. It was fine. Smaller than the wedding. Your family asked about you. I wrote back. What did you tell them? That you were busy living your best life. I smiled. That's accurate. She sent a photo. The venue, decorated in white and gold. Derek and Vanessa at the altar, holding hands. They looked happy. I hoped they were. Not for them. But for me. Because their happiness or unhappiness no longer dictated mine. I sent the photo to Tessa with the caption, "Look what I missed." She replied immediately. Your absence probably made it better. Less tension. I laughed and put my phone away. A year after the wedding, I stood in my studio late at night, alone except for the hum of the kiln and the soft classical music playing from my phone. I just finished my largest commission yet, a custom set for a restaurant downtown. 40 pieces. Plates and bowls and serving dishes, each one shaped by my hands. I walked along the shelves, trailing my fingers over the smooth ceramic, and felt something I'd been building toward for months finally settle into place. Peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of alignment. I was living a life I'd chosen. Doing work that mattered to me. Surrounded by people who valued me not for what I could do for them, but for who I was. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. I hadn't posted in weeks. But tonight felt like it deserved documentation. I took a photo of the studio, warm light spilling across the pottery, tools scattered on the table. I captioned it simply. 1 year ago, I chose myself. Best decision I ever made. I posted it and put my phone away. The responses would come later. Likes and comments and messages from people I knew and people I didn't. But right now, in this moment, it was just me. And that was enough. I turned off the lights, locked the door, and walked out into the cool September night. Somewhere across town, my family was living their lives without me. And I was living mine without them. Both could be true. Both were true. And I was finally, completely okay with that. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.